Some faces step into the fashion world as if they were never meant to belong to reality at all, as if they came from a place where the spotlight was only half the story, and the rest was written in shadows. Karen Elson was one of those faces. Her flaming red hair, skin so pale it seemed carved from moonlight, and ice-blue eyes gave her an otherworldly beauty, fragile yet intense, like a pre-Raphaelite painting wandering onto the ruthless runways of the 90s Supermodels era. But what truly set Karen apart wasn't just this haunting beauty. She appeared at a time when the fashion industry was hungry for faces that defied convention, eager to replace the glossy perfection of the 1982nd with something entirely new, a standard that embraced fragility, mystery, and even a touch of unease. In the chaotic, shimmering world of the dark side of fashion, Karen's presence felt like a quiet rebellion. While many of her peers surrendered themselves completely to fame's intoxicating glow, she kept her distance, just enough to provoke curiosity, and just enough to hide the private storms she carried. At her height, Karen was the muse of Alexander McQueen, the face of Chanel, Valentino, and an array of luxury campaigns that defined the late 92nd. Her walk was deliberate yet fluid, her gaze both inviting and impenetrable. Designers adored her ability to transform, to embody the delicate grace of a Parisian lady one moment and the raw energy of a rock goddess the next. Yet beyond the glamour and camera flashes, Karen was navigating a reality few could see: the relentless psychological strain, the harsh beauty standards of the era, and a marriage to one of the most celebrated rock stars of the time that would eventually shake her to the core. Karen Elson's story is not just about fashion. It is about a woman constantly pulled between light and darkness, between the promise of freedom and the weight of confinement. Her life traces the thin line between survival and surrender in an industry that can make you immortal one moment and invisible the next. And to truly understand why she became one of the most unforgettable figures in the 92nd Supermodels era, we have to go back to where the spotlight never reached: a small, gray English town where dreams were rare and beauty was often a burden. Karen Elson was born on the 15th of January, 1979, in Oldham, an industrial town in Greater Manchester, England. It was not the kind of place where anyone dreamed of walking under runway spotlights or wearing couture gowns in Paris. Oldham at the time was a land of fading textile mills, gray streets, and winters that seemed to stretch endlessly. Her family belonged to the working class. Her father worked in the electrical industry, and her mother was a nurse. They weren't wealthy, but they never truly went without. What they gave Karen and her twin sister Kate was far more valuable than material possessions, independence, and a deep respect for hard work. From an early age, Karen stood out among her peers, taller, thinner, and with flaming red hair that made her impossible to ignore. Unfortunately, in a small town, being different was rarely celebrated. Children teased her mercilessly, calling her carrot or ghost because of her pale skin. Introverted by nature, Karen found refuge in the quiet corners of Oldham's library or wandering with her father's old camera, capturing the melancholy stillness of her surroundings. Music and fashion were her escape routes. She would cut pictures from old Vogue magazines and tape them to her bedroom wall, never imagining that one day her own face would grace those pages, or that she'd be standing among the 92nd Supermodels she admired from afar. Her childhood was also marked by subtle contradictions. Her mother envisioned a secure future for her, perhaps as a teacher or a nurse, while her father encouraged her to look beyond the small-town limits. Yet neither of them could have imagined that their shy, camera-averse daughter would one day step into the dark side of fashion, where beauty and danger so often walked hand in hand. By the time Karen reached high school, she had shot up above most of her classmates. Teachers would jokingly say she should be a model, but to Karen, the idea felt absurd, almost laughable. She believed she was far too odd to ever be considered beautiful. But as fate would have it, the very qualities that made her feel like an outsider would soon open a door into a world she never thought possible, a world that would change her life forever. At 16, Karen Elson was still the shy schoolgirl from Oldham, rarely thinking beyond the familiar streets of her hometown. But one rainy afternoon changed everything. The day fate opened a door into the world of high fashion. She was out in Manchester with friends, shopping for her school's graduation event, when a man approached her. He was a representative from a local modeling agency. At first, Karen thought it was a joke, or worse, something dangerous. But the business card he handed her, along with an invitation to attend a casting, planted a spark of curiosity she couldn't quite ignore. Her mother was strongly opposed at first. She feared the fashion industry was a world full of traps, especially for a naive young girl. Her father, however, was more open-minded, encouraging Karen to at least try, if only to see what she was capable of. Eventually, Karen agreed to attend the casting on the condition that her mother would accompany her. The casting took place in a small, coldly lit room with harsh fluorescent lights. Karen wore a simple dress, her hair tied back. The moment she walked in, one of the judges remarked on her long legs and strikingly unusual face, delicate yet sharp. They didn't see conventional beauty in her, but they were drawn to the difference. A week later, Karen was offered her first modeling contract. Within months, she had her first professional photo shoot for a small magazine. It wasn't Vogue or Harper's Bazaar, but for Karen, it felt like a dream. She still remembered standing under the studio lights, hearing the rhythmic clicks of the camera, and feeling every gaze in the room fixed on her. For the first time, she felt she might have found the place where she belonged. Still, entering the industry didn't mean the road ahead would be easy. People in Oldham whispered that she was delusional, or going nowhere. Yet these doubts only fueled her determination. She was ready to prove that a red-headed girl from a quiet industrial town could take her place among the 90-second supermodels, even if it meant stepping into the dark side of fashion, where the climb to the top was as dangerous as it was dazzling. In 1997, at just 18 years old, Karen Elson received an invitation that would change her life forever, a shoot for Italian Vogue with legendary photographer Steven Meisel. This wasn't just another job, it was the moment that would catapult her from a newcomer to one of the most intriguing names in the industry. Meisel saw something in Karen that few others could, a beauty that was both delicate and unsettling, like a heroine from a Gothic novel. When the editorial was published, the images created a quiet storm in fashion circles, and suddenly Karen's name was on the lips of casting directors from New York to Paris. Not long after, she walked in Alexander McQueen's show, a designer notorious for his theatrical, provocative visions. McQueen transformed Karen into a porcelain doll with deep crimson lips and her fiery hair sculpted into a high, intricate crown. She glided down the runway as though narrating a dark, poetic story with every step. The audience was stunned, and the press christened her Fashion's Red Rose. From there, her calendar became a blur of bookings: Chanel, Valentino, Jean-Paul Gaultier, Dior. She graced the covers of Vogue across multiple editions and fronted campaigns for YSL, Gucci, Louis Vuitton. What made Karen stand out among the 90-second supermodels was her chameleon-like quality. She could embody the refined grace of a Parisian muse in the morning and channel the untamed spirit of rock and roll by night. But it wasn't only her looks. Karen had an aura that went beyond clothing or makeup, a mystery that designers and photographers alike couldn't manufacture. She could bring depth to even the simplest shot, turning an image into a narrative. In the glittering chaos of the dark side of fashion, she was both a part of the spectacle and somehow outside it, observing, absorbing, and shaping it into her own art. Yet behind the first-class flights, the endless fittings, and the blinding camera flashes, Karen began to feel an invisible weight pressing down. She still smiled for the cameras, but inside, questions about her identity and the true cost of modeling began to grow louder. The world believed she was at her happiest, but Karen was already preparing for a quiet battle to protect herself from an industry that could just as easily destroy as it could elevate. From the moment she stepped into high fashion, Karen Elson realized she was not like most models. For her, modeling was never just a ticket to fame. It was a platform to express her values, even when that meant turning down lucrative offers. She famously refused several high-paying campaigns that clashed with her principles. On one occasion, a major cosmetics brand proposed a global contract, but insisted she bleach her iconic red hair to platinum blonde to be more marketable. Karen declined without hesitation, saying, "My red hair is part of who I am, not an accessory you can change for convenience." The decision cost her hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it preserved something priceless: her identity. In an industry that could be ruthless, especially during the height of the 90-second Supermodels era, that kind of defiance was rare. Karen also spoke openly about issues that many avoided: the relentless pressure to stay thin, the lack of diversity in body shapes and ethnic backgrounds. In one interview, she remarked, "This industry celebrates difference, but it fears what truly challenges its own ideals." Her honesty made some brands wary, but it also earned her a reputation as someone unafraid to confront the contradictions of the dark side of fashion. Outside the runway, Karen pursued other forms of art. She explored music, writing her own songs, and later released a critically acclaimed album. This versatility allowed her to step away from the catwalk without losing her creative voice, a rare and strategic move in a field where careers could vanish overnight. Of course, every no came with its own price. Financial pressure and uncertainty about the future sometimes loomed over her. She knew that staying true to herself meant risking her spot in the ever-rotating hierarchy of the fashion elite. Yet Karen understood something crucial: a career built on compromise would never give her the fulfillment she craved. Her refusal to bend to the industry's demands, combined with her ability to thrive on her own terms, made her more than just a model. She became a symbol, not only of beauty, but of resilience and self-determination. In the end, that distinction may have been her most enduring legacy within the glittering, treacherous world she once ruled. From the outside, Karen Elson seemed to have it all: an illustrious career, global fame, and a romantic marriage to Jack White, the frontman of the White Stripes. They met in 2005 while filming the music video for Blue Orchid, and within months, they were married in Brazil. The wedding took place on a boat floating along the Amazon River, a scene straight out of a modern legend. The media hailed them as the perfect fusion of fashion and rock and roll, a union of two creative worlds. Yet behind the fairy tale image, tensions quietly grew. Busy schedules, work pressures, and lifestyle differences began to erode the marriage. In 2011, just days before their 6th wedding anniversary, Karen and Jack shocked fans by announcing their divorce. In a surreal twist, they hosted a divorce party, issuing a press release insisting they remained friends. Though outwardly cordial, Karen later admitted it was a deeply painful period that forced her to rebuild herself from the ground up. Her personal life wasn't the only thing in transition. Professionally, Karen began to step back from the runway, choosing to focus on raising her 2 young children. Fashion insiders started whispering that she had disappeared, that her era, and perhaps the era of many 90-second supermodels, was over. During this time, Karen battled something far more insidious than career decline: her mental health. In interviews, she revealed struggling with depression, feeling as though she had been left behind in a rapidly changing industry. The world she once dominated now seemed obsessed with a new generation of models, and she feared being forever labeled a former supermodel rather than a multifaceted artist. Still, Karen never fully vanished from the dark side of fashion. Even in her quieter years, she continued to write music, take on selective campaigns, and participate in art projects that aligned with her vision. But her retreat marked a turning point: the transformation from a woman who once ruled the covers of Vogue to someone searching for a new definition of herself beyond the catwalk. Her absence from the public eye was not a collapse, but a deliberate withdrawal. a way to protect her spirit in an industry that so often consumes its brightest stars. Today, Karen Elson no longer appears on every magazine cover or dominates the runway season after season, but her image remains a vivid presence in the collective memory of the fashion world. Photographs of her walking in an Alexander McQueen show, that cold, hypnotic gaze beneath fiery hair glowing under the lights, are still circulated as proof of an era when models were more than just pretty faces. They were storytellers, artists, and icons. Karen's legacy is defined not only by her unusual beauty, but by the way she redefined what success could look like in an unforgiving business. She proved that a model could carve her own path, say no to demands that violated her principles, and still endure. In a recent interview, she said, "I want young girls to know that you don't have to lose yourself to succeed. Your difference is your power." Beyond the catwalk, Karen has cemented herself as a multidisciplinary artist. Her music albums have earned critical praise, revealing a voice and songwriting style rich with emotion. She has also been active in charity work, particularly in supporting women and children, using her fame to drive real social impact. This blend of artistry and activism sets her apart from many of her peers in the 90s Supermodels era, marking her as someone who transcended the runway. Karen's story also serves as a bridge between two worlds, fashion and art. She is living proof that a model doesn't have to be consumed by the dark side of fashion, where youth and novelty often dictate worth. Instead, she chose to slow down, invest in projects that mattered to her, and maintain her sense of self long after the flashes faded. Perhaps if Karen were starting out today, in an era that celebrates diversity more openly, she would face less scrutiny for being different. But it was precisely the battles against the rigid standards of her time that shaped her into the strong, independent figure she is now. When we speak of Karen Elson, we don't just remember a red-haired supermodel of the 1992nd. We remember a woman who turned her life into an ongoing work of art, one whose influence extends beyond any trend, leaving a mark that time cannot erase.